You know that feeling, right? You wake up, maybe you've got this great plan for the day,
Uh-huh.
like maybe some meditation, get a workout in, maybe even some study before, I don't know, that poker lesson you've been looking forward to.
That sounds ideal.
But then, the alarm goes off, reality hits, suddenly it's chores, emails, errands, and just, well, what everyone else needs from you.
Right, the daily grind.
Exactly. And it really hammers home that feeling that, well, even if you think you're free, you're never really free, socially speaking.
Hmm.
And those little things, those mundane pressures, they often seem to echo these much bigger, like, philosophical questions, don't they?
Yeah.
About choice and belief.
Absolutely. And that's pretty much the territory we're diving into today. It's fascinating stuff.
So what do we got?
Well, our sources for this deep dive are kind of unique. They blend those personal stories, like you just described, with some really quite deep philosophical thinking.
Hmm.
So our mission really is to unpack what it genuinely means to live, an examined life. We'll be exploring belief, free will, sincerity, which is a big one here.
Sincerity.
Yeah. We're pulling insights from this video source that actually uses a conversation and everyday chat as a launch pad into some seriously thought-provoking ideas.
All right, so where does this conversation start? What's the setup?
Well, it kicks off with a pretty relatable scene, actually. The speaker in the video just out in town minding their own business.
Uh-huh.
And they get approached by someone offering a religious book. Might be Seventh-day Adventist, the source kind of hints, but the specific group isn't really the main point.
Right, it's the interaction itself.
Exactly. The key thing is the speaker, they say they're not religious, but they engage with this person like a philosopher would. They're curious about the ideas, not looking to be converted or argue.
Okay, so they're open to the concepts.
Precisely. And that's where it gets really interesting, philosophically speaking.
Uh-huh.
Right away, the speaker brings up this idea they call the myth of free choice.
The myth of free choice. How so?
Well, the person offering the book makes the argument, the fairly standard one. People are free to choose God or not, and they have to accept the consequences either way.
Yeah, you hear that a lot. Sounds like free will on the surface.
It does, but the source immediately pushes back on that. It really questions how free that choice actually is.
How do they challenge it?
With this really striking analogy, picture this. A slave owner tells their slave, look, you're free not to work, but if you choose not to, I'll torture you to death.
Oof. Yeah. Okay.
What kind of free choice is that, right? The analogy just cuts right through it.
It really does. Because if the stakes are, say, eternal damnation, like in the Christian hell doctrine, how is that a free choice? The alternative is unthinkable.
Exactly. It basically nullifies genuine freedom. It becomes coercion, not choice.
So it's choice under duress, essentially.
That's a good way to put it. And this leads into a broader point the source makes about repetition.
Repetition.
Yeah, how often arguments, especially maybe religious ones in this context, are based on just unexamined repetition, like an actor reciting lines.
Ah, okay. Like saying the words without really thinking about them.
Precisely. The source uses that exact image. An actor repeating lines without thinking about the truth or accuracy. Just going through the motions, reciting the script.
That's a powerful image. And it makes you wonder, how often do we all do that? Repeat things we believe or things we do without really digging into why?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Which brings us neatly to the next big theme. Hypocrisy versus sincerity.
Right, the gap between what people say and what they do.
Exactly. The source critiques how often people, religious or otherwise, live in ways that just don't line up with their stated beliefs.
Yeah.
It even throws out this really provocative phrase, satanic Christians.
Whoa, okay. That's strong language. What do they mean by that? Not literally.
No, not in a literal theological sense. It's used, I think, metaphorically, to highlight the most extreme version of that disconnect. Someone who claims the faith, but whose actions are totally contrary to its core principles.
So it's a stark way of showing that hypocrisy.
A very stark way, yeah. But the underlying point isn't just about calling people out. It's about the value of the opposite, sincerity.
Okay, so what is sincerity in this context? More than just honesty.
Yeah, it seems to be. It's about the genuine attempt to live according to the principles you claim to hold, whether they're philosophical or religious. It's about aligning your actions with your beliefs.
Closing that gap we talked about.
Exactly. It's presented as this ultimate test of integrity, living authentically. That's where the real value lies, according to this perspective.
Okay, so living your beliefs. That reminds me, you mentioned the speaker's poker teacher. They brought up a comparison.
Oh, right. Yeah, the poker teacher apparently drew this interesting parallel between Stoicism and Catholic monasticism.
Stoics and monks.
Yeah.
How are they similar?
Well, the teacher pointed out that both traditions put a huge emphasis on self-discipline, routine, structure.
Okay, I can see that. Dedication, focus.
Right. And that in practice, monks often live out many Stoic principles, even if their underlying reasons might be different, God versus reason or nature.
That's fascinating. Does the source take a side there between Stoicism and Catholicism?
It does lean a certain way. The argument presented is that Stoicism actually goes a step further
How so?
because it doesn't rely on God as an intermediary. There's no divine forgiveness or intervention factored in the same way. It's described as more maybe extreme in its focus on pure rationality and personal responsibility.
So more direct accountability to yourself, no excuses.
Pretty much. It's about direct action, self-reliance, not looking for external absolution or help in the same way.
That sounds demanding. Does the source mention if that level of self-reliance is maybe too much for people sometimes? Or if there's value in having that external support?
That's a really good point. The source doesn't really delve into the potential downsides or the need for external support explicitly. Its main focus seems to be championing that individual, rational self-mastery.
Hey.
The idea seems to be that relying on an intermediary, even a divine one, can kind of water down your personal accountability.
Right, so if it's all about living these principles personally and directly, role models must be crucial then.
Absolutely. And the source brings this up. It holds up Jesus, actually, as a key example.
As a role model.
Yeah, as someone who, under extreme pressure, did manage to live out his principles sincerely.
Okay.
But it also suggests that most people, including many philosophers, many religious figures throughout history, ultimately fall short of their own ideals. They don't quite manage it.
So Jesus is the exception that proves the rule, almost.
Kind of. And it raises that question, why do we need these living examples? Why do they matter so much?
Well, I guess without them, ideals just seem abstract, maybe impossible.
Exactly. They feel like pie-in-the-sky thinking. But seeing someone do it, like the example used here, makes it feel achievable. It shows that, okay, maybe it is possible to live this way.
Makes virtue feel tangible.
Tangible, attainable. Which then leads to a pretty pointed critique in the source material about, well, modern philosophy teaching.
Oh, what's the critique?
Basically, philosophers who talk the talk but don't walk the walk.
The academic who studies virtue but doesn't practice it.
Something like that. The suggestion is that if philosophy isn't applied, if it's not lived and constantly examined in one's own life, it just becomes empty words, an intellectual game disconnected from actual living.
Just theory, no practice.
Right.
Yeah.
And that loops back to this core message, the need for constant, honest self-examination.
Asking those hard questions.
Yeah. Like, is what I believe actually true? Is it even possible to live this way? Why am I doing the things I do?
That's challenging.
It is. And there's another interesting analogy the source uses here, comparing animals and humans. Animals, right, they mostly run on instinct. They don't usually overeat to the point of self-destruction or hoard resources just for the sake of it.
Generally, yeah. Survival instinct is strong.
But humans, we're fully capable of all sorts of self-destructive excesses, greed, gluttony, you name it.
We definitely are.
But, and this is the crucial part, humans also have this unique capacity for reason. We can actually notice our instincts or bad habits and consciously choose to override them. We can change.
So we have a capacity for excess, but also the capacity to choose not to indulge it.
Precisely. That ability to reason and change our own patterns, that's presented as our unique power, our way to fight back against those ingrained habits.
But it's still hard work, right? Even if you have the capacity.
Oh, absolutely. And the source acknowledges that directly. It mentions the poker teacher again, talking about the practical struggles.
Like setting routines?
Yeah, not just setting a routine, but actually sticking to it, especially when life throws curveballs, travel, getting sick, disruptions. It's tough to stay consistent.
Tell me about it. Maintaining routines when things get busy is, well, the real challenge.
It's universal, isn't it? Even for people deeply committed to self-improvement or philosophy, consistency is hard.
Yeah.
So the key takeaway there isn't really about achieving perfection, because let's face it, that's probably out of reach for most of us.
Right.
It's more about the persistence, the honest reflection, just the act of striving, of examining yourself and trying to do better. That process itself has real value.
The effort counts.
The effort, the sincerity of the effort, absolutely.
Okay, so wrapping this up, what are the big takeaways for someone listening? What does all this mean for, us?
Well, we've touched on quite a bit.
Yeah.
We've looked at that idea of free choice maybe being an illusion when there's coercion involved, like that slave analogy showed us.
Right, the importance of genuine freedom.
And then there's the huge emphasis on sincerity over hypocrisy, really trying to live what you preach.
Closing the gap.
Exactly. And how wisdom traditions, like Stoicism in this case, offer these frameworks for self-mastery, for taking that direct responsibility.
And the need for role models, for living examples to show us it's possible.
Definitely. But maybe the most crucial thread running through all of it is that constant call for self-examination.
The unexamined life.
Is maybe not worth living, or at least it leads back to just repeating patterns without thinking, keeping us stuck in those everyday constraints we started with.
So the encouragement is to keep asking those questions.
Constantly. Is this true? Why do I believe it? How should I live? Really interrogate your own assumptions.
Okay, so a final thought then, maybe something for listeners to chew on.
Yeah, maybe think about this. Where in your own life might you be kind of acting like that actor repeating lines, just going through the motions without fully buying into it or examining it?
That's a good question.
And maybe just pick one small principle, something you genuinely believe in. What's one tiny step you could take this week to live that principle just a little more sincerely?
Welcome. I had a busy morning and now I have a poker lesson. I would have liked to have some more time before starting my poker lesson so I could maybe meditate, so I could cool down because I was busy the entire morning. I only had time for breakfast very early and that was all. And the rest of the time I had to work. And now I have to see my poker teacher. There's a funny thing. When I was in town, somebody wanted to give me a religious book, something like the Seventh Adventist, or I don't know. I'm not an expert in every religious declination that there is of Christianity. I know some basic stuff about it, but I'm not an expert. And when I talk about it in my books, then I do research. But I do not know the Bible by heart. I don't want to learn it by heart. I don't even want to read it. I just find it interesting to talk about certain concepts, certain ideas. But I'm not a religious man. She came and told me at the end of the story, I'm not going to take your book because that's not my thing. I'm a philosopher. I had a talk with her like 5 or 10 minutes. They do a little what a cynic did before. And they go to people and tell them everything that is wrong and why they live an anti-philosophical life. And that actually never works because either people are interested and then they buy your book and listen to what you say, or they're not. And if they're not, if you run behind them and tell, they won't change their opinion. They have to come to you. They have to be interested. They have to learn. And I explained her it's fun that she comes to me because I vlog explaining the difference between religion and philosophy. At the end of the discussion, here's what she says to me. She says, it doesn't matter. You can choose. And I have to answer the question again and again. It's like with anarchy. You always have to answer the same questions again and again. And I know that's the only way people can learn. But it's always the same. And they don't care if it's true, if it's accurate. That doesn't matter. They always say the same because they have learned it, but they have never examined what they are saying. They do not know if it is true or not. They don't care about that. They just learn something and they repeat it. They're like an actor on a stage who plays something that he learned. And he does it over and over and over, exactly the same way. And he doesn't think about what he's doing. She told me the thing that they always do. I said, I'm not interested. I'm not going to take your book. And she said, well, you have 3 choices. And I have to remind her, the God you believe in, because she felt that she believes in Jesus and it has something to do with Christianity. It's one of the different sects of Christianity. And she said, you have 3 choices, so it doesn't matter. That's the great thing with our God. And I say, your God is a jealous God. It says it in the Bible. Even if I'm not mistaken, I have to check in my book when I read about it, that he's even cruel. It says it in the Bible. So if you do not unite with him, you will be punished and very severely. That's why hell exists. And that's the place you go to if you do not unite with him. If you do not accept the 1050 laws that are in the New Testament, you will face the consequences, especially if that they exist. Then it's even worse. If you did not know that the Bible exists, maybe he would forgive you, but not if it exists. My poker teacher is waiting, so just here's my book written in French. You can get it. If you speak French, it's great to read it in French. And if not, here's the English translation, which is awesome. I've read it already 4 times and I keep reading it. And now I'm going to meet my poker teacher.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. I had a very busy morning and I didn't have any time. I just have time to take breakfast and I was in town the entire morning. Because even if I'm freer than most people, I still live in a slave plantation and there's still stuff I have to do from time to time. So there's nothing you can do about that. And the thing is, I've barely managed to do all the things I wanted to do before jumping on our call and meeting you. But that's how it is. You get used to it, I guess. What about you?
Well, I just ate some lunch and read your book, actually.
How nice.
Unless you have a topic you'd like to talk about, I would talk a bit about your book.
Oh, that would be very interesting. I'd like that. Actually, when you teach and when you talk about stuff like anarchy, stoicism, or religion, you always have to explain the same thing over and over. And that's just what happened when I was in town, because somebody wanted to give me for free a book, one of the sects of Christianity. And I had a little chat with her, but I did tell her that's not my tasse of coffee or tea and that I won't take it. The thing is just, you always have to say the same. And people really hard believe in certain concepts because they have learned it. And she's told me at the end, it doesn't matter if you don't take the book or if you don't believe in it. It doesn't matter because you have free choice. If you do not unite with God, there's a place for you. It's called hell. It's a jealous God. It says it very clearly in the Bible. And you will get punished. If you didn't know that he would exist, you would have a chance. But if not, you get punished under his law. It says it in the Bible. But she still believes that it doesn't matter. That me believing or not believing is the same. And people are very inconsequent with their beliefs. They never examine them. Are they actually true? When I say you have free choice, what do I mean with that? Because to me, there's no free choice. If I tell my slave in my 5th book, if I tell my slave, you have free choice, you can not work. But if you do not work, I will torture you to death. I will whip you to death. If I say that, what free choice does he really have? And in this case, hell is even worse than being just whipped to death. I mean, free choice, that sounds nice, but think a little about what you say. Let's talk about my book. I hope the subject is more interesting and I can talk about something else than always coming back to the same topics with people who actually don't feel like if I can tell them 1 billion times and they still don't care or just say it doesn't matter. I know exactly because my book says so. But is it true? Why don't you ask yourself, is it true when you tell me something? What about you? And what's the thing you want to talk about?
There were different passages. One was actually on Catholicism and the deadly sins that I read. And I think it was quite interesting how you, I guess, saw the positive side in Catholicism and the similarity with Stoicism in a way. And that also led me to think how monks live in monasteries in Christianity. I think they're embodying a lot of Stoic principles through that, even if they're not completely, even if there's differences in the two. And you talked about that as well in your passage, that in your opinion, Stoicism goes a step further than, for example, Catholicism, because it's not hiding itself behind God and it's more extreme in this way. But still, I found it quite amusing to think about and read about and think about the similarity between the two. That's one thing I wanted to mention.
You're correct with that. I mean, it would be a very bad book if there's nothing good in it. I think we can all agree with that. So yes, you can find interesting stuff and it can teach you stuff. But the thing is, most people aren't sincere in their approach because they never want to practice actually what the book says. And that's very disappointing. You could call them satanic Christians or something like that. They're very hypocritical because the book says something and they don't mind doing the opposite their entire life. They think it's all right. And when you talk about monks and other people who believed and really try to practice, I'm all for it if you're sincere and you understand why what you're doing is good, but most of them failed. For me, Jesus is the huge exception. He didn't fail. They could put him on a cross and judge him before that, and he didn't fail. And everybody else who later on was in the same position as he was, or was persecuted, they all didn't have the strength to resist. They all didn't have the strength to follow their moral and their principles. But Jesus didn't fail, and that's why he's such an extraordinary man. Some people believe that he doesn't exist. I think he did exist. Now, everything we tell about him, the miracles and the resurrection and all that stuff, well, that you can debate. You can have your own opinion on that. But as a man, the image that it has come to us is very important because it shows you a path you can follow. The thing is, if you can never show anything good to people, no wise man, the wise man is just a fiction that we create, then people will say he doesn't exist. And if he doesn't exist, nobody can do that. So you're teaching me something that nobody can do. And it's really important to see examples of people who could do it easily, who managed to do it because they believed for them it was natural to act in that way. And there are a lot of people you find in the Middle Ages of Japan or in other places. There are a lot of people who showed immense courage and lived after their moral and their principles. Because I think it's very sad. It's like me. If I would talk all day long about Stoicism, but there's no Stoicism in me, then what's the point? And all the philosophers nowadays who teach in university or write books, they rarely really believe in something or just a very small thing. And that doesn't matter. Like saying nothing exists apart from my mind. Now, that's nice. But where do you go from there? What conclusion do you come once you believe that the only thing that exists is your mind? And apart that, there's nothing real. I think it's called Stoicism. I'm not sure. I have to check. But if you come up with something like that, that sounds great. It's maybe new or it was new at one time. Okay, but what do you do with it? How does it help you? I would like people to be honest and examine their thoughts and ask themselves, is it true or is it possible? I believe that everything I teach is true and possible. And I believe that as soon as you have the age of reason, you can do it if you really believe in it and you understand why it should be done. Now, why do people fail? Because there are a lot of reasons to fail. There are a lot of reasons to lie. There are a lot of reasons to behave differently than what you should. But you can understand that you did something wrong and avoid it in the future. And I think that's important. If you don't think about that, well, then you're like a dog. And the dog is actually in a better position than you, because he only follows his instinct. He will never do something really harmful. He will only follow his instinct. And his instincts are limited. For example, he will only eat the amount he needs when he's hungry. He will never go beyond that. But if you look at humans, well, they eat beyond what they should eat. That's why you have so much obese people nowadays. And they also want to have much more than what is actually necessary. They have limitless desires. But all that, you can change your opinion to that and come back to reason. And I think that's important. And without philosophy, you would never get that. What do you say, Norman, about my monologue?
I think it goes together with what I wanted to bring as a second thing with reading your book. I found it today, but also other days I've read it, very motivating in wanting to live in a better way. So just like there's satanic Christians, I guess there can also be satanic Stoics who don't really according to things they believe. So for me personally, I think having a good routine is always something I've dreamed about and found very inspiring and like a dream to have a daily routine. But it's always been difficult for me to find that balance so that the routine is something I'm able to carry on for a long time. So either I make the routine too difficult and then just decide that I don't want to do it and then I quit following it, or something happens like I travel or I get sick and then my routine changes and I'm unable to get back to the routine I was on. But I think somehow reading your book and these thoughts of striving to be better for me personally bring me to these thoughts about my routine and how I could try again with it to have a better success with having a routine I would be able to follow, but also that would be good in a long way, both for me and also for just being a virtuous, good way of being. So I think it's often the implementation of some principle or following it or embodying it is like, can feel like 99%. That 1% of the enjoyment of a good idea or concept can be very difficult to put in practice, at least for me.
It's for everybody like this. Norman, you're not the only one. And you sound a little like my disciple. You start talking like if you take it serious and want to improve. I appreciate that. I think it's great. And I think it will allow you to have a much better life. But it takes time. Just as poker, it takes a long time. And here's one trick that I can recommend to you. It's not totally free, but I don't remember what it costs. I don't think it was that expensive. Maybe if you're lucky, it's just 1 or 2 USD. If you're not lucky, it's like 15 USD. Anyway, it's called Habit Wix. You can just open it and put your habits on. For example, I have one for running, play the piano, sport in virtual realities, take my vitamins, research in the market because I want to do some research once a week, and meditation. I also would like to meditate at least once a week. Those are the things. And every time I check one, every time I do one, it says it. And I see the entire month or even more than a month. Here I see from April to August, so a couple of months. And you see how many times you missed what you actually wanted to do. And that can motivate you because when you see that you did it for 3 days or an entire week without failing once, for example, sport, running, I didn't mess it up. I went nearly every time, one exception. But the piano, I was not that good. And I didn't find the time to do it a lot in my sports and virtuality. My vitamins I took nearly every day, not every day, but a lot of times. And market research, I missed 1 week, and if not, I did. But I did the work afterwards. When I missed 1 week, then I did the work 1 week later, the work that I missed. So, and meditation, I've done only 2 when I should have done 4. But that helps me because it shows me how good I am and where I'm missing and why I'm missing. And you can say if you want to do it once a week, every 2 days, or once a month, you can tell him how much you want to do it. That helps a little. I tried a lot of tracking for my habits, but this one I found the best because it gives you a summary of all you have done. And I find that quite motivating, especially when I tell myself, well, now I have, for example, played the piano 6 days straight without missing one single session. That's great. Then I can think about it and tell myself, since it wasn't that hard and I could do it for 6 days straight, why not do it for 10 or 30 days without missing one session? That's a little trick you could try if you want. And if not, we have also to talk about what your goals are, what you are actually trying to do. So if you can tell me that, maybe I can help you a little more with sticking to your habits and improving.
I think it's a good recommendation to keep better track of the things I want to do. And I think part of the issue is also figuring out what things are important for me. So maybe that's also like a first step to make a list of things in that I would like to do every week, for example. I think maybe I have to start with that, even to think about priorities in this way. Usually I know what my number 1 or 2 goal is. It's often just to play a lot of poker, or, well, it has sometimes also been to exercise a lot, or like this one main goal. I think I do quite well in having dedication towards that. But for me, what's often difficult is that there's menial tasks in life that I will forget about, basically, and that will or not put enough emphasis on. So I think that's like these things we have to do, but we necessarily don't want to do. I think a lot of this would be for me to figure out what are the things I have to do every week, and then committing to doing them, because I can often procrastinate with some stuff like my diet or my exercise when it's not my first focus. In general, my general health, then also just like keeping things in order or organizing things, or all these things I don't value too much, like cleaning or organizing, or sometimes even social obligations and things like that. And so they're not very high often in my priorities, but then over a long time, when I just focused on one thing, they build up and get worse. So my health can get worse, everything can become very messy, and my personal relationships might be in a situation I don't want them to be, and stuff like that. And then it takes a lot of effort to try to fix them or change them, which means it's like a forced break from the things I'd like to do. And so I think it would make sense if I, rather than the things I don't want to do piling up and then overwhelming me when I have no escape from dealing with them, to have some, maybe a couple of hours every day that I don't really want to do, but that's necessary, which doesn't sound too complicated. But it's very easy still to, it's a discipline issue, I think, and it's tough to find that daily discipline or weekly discipline, I find, sometimes at least.
Well, Norman, there's things you can call discipline. There is stuff that is discipline. For example, me not playing the piano every day is discipline. It's a discipline issue. The thing is, I just did so much other things that I always don't find the time to actually play. I want to play, but I don't find the time. Because when I play, it will take at least 1 hour. And I tell myself I have so much more to do. So I put it off. That's a discipline issue. And I should do it because it helps me with my harmony. I feel much more balanced and much better once I've played. I should do it every morning. The best would be just take a look at my charts, see if I have to change anything or take a position or exit a position. And once that's done, take my breakfast and then play 1 hour the piano. That would be great if I could stick to that. And some days I do, but other days I have so many ideas and so much stuff I want to do that I put it off. So that's discipline. But not everything is discipline. You must understand that you cannot be perfect. You cannot do everything 100%. You cannot be the best cleaner, the best cook, the best husband, the best father of your kids, the best driver, the best, I don't know what you come up with, the best athlete. There's stuff you have to neglect so that you can take more care of the really important stuff. For example, I do very little cleaning and it's dirty. Marianne would find it very dirty. But the thing is, I let my robot do most of the job, my vacuum robot. And for the 2-3 things that come, I do them when they are really necessary. It's too dirty. I change the nap for my table where I eat, and sometimes I wash, but I put it off as long as possible. I will not start washing stuff until it's really necessary. And I don't change clothes just to change them. They have to be dirty for me to change them. So yes, a lot of people would say, how can you live like that? That's dirty and all that. But to me, that's not a priority. My priority is not to have the most clean household. I want it to be useful. I want the stuff at work. I want it to be clean. I don't want dirt on the floor or something like this, but I'm not gonna make a big deal out of it. I push it off the most just so I can concentrate on things that are more important to me. And that's one thing I want to say. There's another tip I wanted to give you, but I don't remember. Tell me what you think about that, and maybe it comes back to me.
I think I can be similar in this way. And yes, I agree that there's not like with things that are not high in priorities. And my goal wouldn't be to be the best cleaner or athlete or none of these things really. But there's some standards, I guess, I would like to set for myself and then be able to hold them. So, and I think with cleaning, I also don't like it too much. And sometimes I neglect it more than other times. But what I found is it doesn't influence so much how I am or how I feel directly, but it influences more how willing or happy I would be to have guests over. In that sense, I think it's very important. So at any time, there wouldn't be an issue for it. It's like these things that won't be necessarily done for ourselves, but for other people too. And I think it also goes with something like if thinking about death, if I died today, then everything I have not done for today, let's say I have dishes I haven't cleaned or something like that, someone would have to now deal with that after my death, which you could say is not a big problem. as probably they would be more worried about me being dead in general. But still, I like this thought that when I would all of a sudden die, it would be so nice to leave something for the people so that it would be as little trouble to them as possible. To leave money for the funeral, to have everything orderly and clean, which is, you could say, very unlikely. But I think part of the stuff you've written as well in your book about Stoicism is living each day as it would be your last. And in that way, I think it's also maybe important. But did it come to your mind you wanted to say?
Little. Now, I find interesting that you talk about death, and I think we can look at it in a different way than you just said, and that might be helpful. Let's talk about that. So, if I die, and I'll get half an hour or 1 hour to think about my life. Will it matter to me, for example, that I have paid all my bills? Will it matter to me that my apartment is clean? Will it really matter that my storage unit is empty, or that I did throw out all the stuff that has to be thrown out? Will that really matter to me? Will I say, okay, I missed my life because my storage unit is not clean, or I haven't paid every bill? Do you really think that that matters to me when I'm dead? And let's say, for the sake of the argument, I get 30 minutes or 1 day to think about my life and what I did with it. Does that matter to me? It won't. It will have no importance to me. I would say, great, I will never have to do that kind of crap again. And I'm really happy that it's over. But here's what matters to me. My friend Marian, I want to be a good friend to my friends, for example. Because I think friendship is a virtue, a Stoic virtue that we practice because we like it, we enjoy the company of our friends, but also because it is what a human should be. We should be kind and generous and always trying to help people around us. I think that's better than showing violence and hate against them. So you can easily make the argument that friendship is something important, and nature makes us a very sociable creature who always looks for friendship. And nowadays it's so hard because most people lose the amount of friends they have drastically because of the new technologies. The more time they spend on the smartphone and so on, the less friends they have. A lot of people live in great solitude. But here's what matters to me, that I was a good friend to my friends. I don't have so many, but to those who have, that I tried my best as long as possible. And Marian, she asked me recently to buy a couple of stuff for her on Temu, because she doesn't have a credit card. She doesn't want to use the credit card of her husband, and she thinks it's just convenient to ask me to get the stuff from Temu. So I did, but she wants a lot of stuff for a little kid, her grandson. And then she examines the stuff, and half of it has to be sent back. So I have to waste time, and today was very busy. And on top of that, I had to pack it, book it in a package, then find out how DPT wants me to send it back, which is not the same as a post office. And I had to go through all the hoops. And every time I'm thinking about it, it makes me angry. Because I tell myself, man, why? I have so much to do. Why do I have to waste my time with that? I'm really not interested in what is in the package or any stuff. For me, it's all garbage. It should be all thrown away. I would never buy it. But she's my friend. And it makes her happy to offer something to her small grandchild. It makes her happy to buy stuff for him. A kid, 5 years, he's very young still. It makes her happy. Well, I'll do it all. I let her choose the stuff. I order it. I go get it in town. And then I send it back. But to me, it's really not something that interests me. And I still do it because I tell myself, she's my friend. If it makes her happy, let's do it. But when I die and I have 1 day to think about my life, and I can look back at our friendship and tell myself I tried my best, that will make me happy. So that's important to me. Also, if I spend time with you, Poker, and you're just a great teacher, you do your best to teach me. So if I can, when I die, think about my poker journey and tell myself I try to be a decent poker player, and Norman is not proud because I will never be a very good poker player, but Norman at least thinks I did an effort. At least I tried to get better. If I have the impression that I didn't waste my time or your time, that also would make me happy. By looking at it like this, you will find out what is actually important and what is not so important. And then you can focus on the really important stuff. What do you think about that?
Yes, I want to say that part of being a good friend is when you die, leaving a clean storage unit as well. But you're right, that's a small detail in it. So I agree.
I'm not renting from my friend Marian. I'm renting from a company who puts the stuff on the market. They are professionals, so they know exactly what to do when somebody dies. And also you have to guarantee at least 3 months of rent in front, and then I have an insurance. So if I did anything wrong in the apartment or in the storage unit or in the building, it's just an insurance. When you do harm to somebody else, the insurance will pay. Normally everybody had it. I had it actually because when I was using my bike or something else, if I get in an accident, and then I would like to have something to pay if something happens to somebody else. But they would just ask for the money and some professionals will do the job. And the money exists. I paid for it. I've deposited. I'm paying the insurance every year, even if now I need it less because I do not use a bike or a scooter anymore. Then I cannot get into an accident. If there's less chance of me getting the accident and harming the property of somebody else, well, then why do I pay it for it? So I don't know if it's really a smart idea to keep paying for that. But the thing is, they will just ask for the money, they will get the money, and then professional will do the job. What's so bad about that, Norman? Then makes a living, can put some food on the table. I understand your idea. If for you, it's really important that your apartment is great and that you have paid for everything, even your funeral, if that's really important for you, then do it. It isn't for me. And it's a mistake I did. Once I paid for the funeral of somebody, and I would never do it again because it was a family member. And I would never do it again. Never. I did it because at that moment I wasn't Stoic and I thought it was the right thing to do. I believe that we live in a slave plantation. And if you don't pay for it, then the slave master pays for it. I'd rather have him pay for it than me. I think he extorted me and the other slaves enough. Since he wants to take care of that, since it's his law, and according to his law, he acts a certain way when somebody dies, well, then let him also pay the cost of the funeral. Before it was different. Look, if we are friends and we are peasants, and I have one small farm and you will have the farm next door, and you suddenly die, and there's no state that intervenes. You just die. And for your wife, it is very hard to dig a hole and put you in the ground. Then, of course, I would go and dig the hole and put you in the ground, because then it's necessary, since there's no slave plantation and nobody will do it if we don't do it. But nowadays, it's very different, because the state has such an impact on our lives and does so much. If he wants to do it, then let him do it. If you go against what he does, you get sanctioned. They call it disturbing the peace. So if you don't agree with it, or you don't let him do what he does, you disturb the peace. And you will get sanctioned. Then you have to pay some more fines or you go to prison. So you cannot oppose yourself. It's the law. He made the law up. Let him do what his law says, how he should act in a certain situation. I've seen a video about somebody who went to Rome and he was in front of the Colosseum. And there are a lot of people who try to scam you there. And he started joking with them and calling them out for the scam they play on tourists. And the people get very angry. Most of them are migrants. They started throwing stones at him, running behind him. There were like 5, 10 people running behind him. And they got very violent. And he ended up on a cliff trying to save himself. But there was a cliff, so he would fall down. And while he was on this cliff, they kept on throwing stones at him and bottles and everything they could. And it took a long time, but finally the police arrived and then everybody was gone. So they didn't arrest anybody. But why do you care about people scamming people? I mean, it's not good, but is it your job? No, it's the job of the police, of the Italian police. So do you care about that? Let them do their job. If you arrest one of the scammers because he's pickpocketing you or anything else, if you arrest him, you go to jail, straight to jail. The scammer keeps on scamming. And they let him go and he keeps on scamming. You have no right to intervene. It's the police. I mean, he did it for his video on YouTube. I understand that. And he was really brave because he faced like 5 or 10 violent, young, strong men. But apart from the spectacle you can show on YouTube, I don't think you should do it because I don't think it will do any good. The slave master has decided that there's the police, everybody can call, and then the police comes. And in that case, that's what happened at the end. But why do you intervene? Why do you make a big story about it? I mean, people aren't honest. People are scamming all the time. But it's not your job to stop them. Now, if it would be anarchy, and you say, okay, no, that doesn't go, and I won't let it go. And also on the anarchy, that guy who is brave, he would be armed. And I guarantee you that they would never have done with him what they did because they knew he is not armed. And a lot of people would be armed because you would have the right to be armed. And in that case, a lot of people would. So even if he's not armed, somebody else would be armed. And people wouldn't let it fly. They wouldn't let some 10 people running after a guy and wanting to beat him up really bad. They wouldn't let it go. They would say, you're the one who is coming, and no, you're not going to hurt him really bad just because you're not happy because he intervenes in your scam. On the anarchy, this behavior is normal. But in our system, it is not normal anymore because you have a slave master who takes care of that. And since he wants to take care of that, you have to let him do the things he does. If you intervene or say something, it will turn very bad for you. You cannot intervene. You cannot stop them. You have no right to do that. You have no right to arrest people. He only has right to arrest people. And that's only the case because he made up that law. So let him do it. Does it make any sense?
Yeah.
Am I talking about the same subject, or did I go on a really big tangent and talking about stuff that doesn't help in any way? Just to tell you that if for you it's really important that your apartment is clean and that you have paid for your funeral and all that, if that is the top priority, then do it. Be sincere and act accordingly. For me, it is not. And since the slave master intervenes, he should do it. But when I was young, I did a mistake. I paid for the funeral of one of my family members, and I should have never done it. But it's only now that I know that I should have never done it. Because if I didn't pay, then nobody could have asked me to pay it. I did it spontaneously. And if I didn't pay, the slave master would have paid. I like that more, much more.
Okay. I guess it is a question of priority.
And also with habits, Norman. At the beginning, they are always hard. For me, it will be quite hard to get back to a routine and play the piano once a day because I missed a lot of days. Now, summer, my piano teacher is not here. And all that made me miss a lot of days. When they are there, at least I tell myself I have to play because I will meet him. So it's hard to get back into a routine once you have quit it. But once you do something on a regular basis, like for me, running, at the beginning it was really hard. I could barely run 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And even that was very hard. I didn't run fast. I couldn't breathe anymore. And now it's easy and I start running more and doing more. So if you stick to a routine, it makes it easier every time you do it. But you also should enjoy it up to a certain degree. If you really hate what you do, for example, me, what I do for Marianne today with the thing I had to put and the package I have to give, DPT. If I had to do that every day, I would say, man, come on, ask your husband, ask your kids, learn to do it yourself. But for me, even doing that once every 6 months gets really on my nerves. I get angry every time I think about it. I will never tell her that I get angry, but if you really hate something, how do you change that? I don't think you actually can up to a certain degree. Look, if I have to put an end to, nobody likes suicide. Nobody likes putting an end to his life. So it's very hard to explain that to people and do it. But if I really hate it, why would I do it? I do it because I'm convinced that it's necessary. I do it because I think that the moment has come and that's the best option at my disposal. But if not, of course, I would never do it. Oh, that makes me think about a very important subject we can talk about if you still have 5 to 10 minutes. But already tell me what you think, and then I'll talk about a very important subject I want to bring up. For me, it's important. For you, it might not be. But for me, it's important.
One thing that always somehow stuck with me with relating suicide or suffering was this saying that however hard things get in life, you only have to endure it for about 50 or 70 years more. And I find it very comforting to think in this way. What's really the necessity of suicide if the life will end anyway in 50, 70 years? Might as well wait it out. I like this frame of thought. And then with the stuff you talked about your friend, I'm wondering if she might think you actually enjoy this thing. So maybe it would be a good idea to let her know that you're only really doing it to help her, but it really gets on your nerves, I think. Otherwise, maybe she gets the wrong impression about it and will ask you to do more of it than you would like.
Okay, I'll tell her on occasion. Thank you, Norman, for that advice. And here's the thing. You said that whatever it is, you only have to endure it 50 or 70 years and then it's over.
Depending on how long a person lives, right? But even that may be less, maybe 30, 40 years. But let's say 50 years.
You know about my past since you have read my book and we have talked about it a couple of times. That I was in a very prestigious school when I was a kid. Because the director gave me a grant. He allowed me to stay even though I could not pay the private school. He did a lot for me. He was one of my, how do you call it, benefactor. He was very generous and he allowed me to stay without me being able to pay for anything. No meal, no nothing. And he paid for everything and gave it to me for free. Well, it's very expensive. It's for the elite. It's one of the most expensive schools you can go to. If you look at him, if you look at the school, if you look at the employees, if you look at the gardener, at the thing that they have one place at the lake, the other one in the mountains where they go in winter to go skiing and so on. When you see all that luxury that the elites offer their kids, you tell yourself the guy at the head of that must be happy. He's wealthy. Billionaires come and see him every year and give them his kid for education. He should be happy. Everybody would assume that he was happy. I would do the same. I would assume that we're happy. When I was in that school and I saw him, he sometimes supervised the studies. So in the morning we had lessons, in the afternoon we did some sports, and in the evening we had study periods where we had to study for the next day. And he sometimes supervised, actually quite frequently, he supervised those studies. So he was sitting there and just making sure that we didn't make too much noise and so on. But I wouldn't imagine that he was unhappy. I mean, billionaires come and see him. He makes a very good living. Most people manage only to make 5% by having a restaurant or something else. That's nearly nothing. They work for free the entire year. But when you do stuff that is very luxurious and is very expensive, then you can have an ROI, return on investment, that might be 23%. And that even after paying all your taxes. He's not poor. It's all extreme luxury there. He's privileged in his position. Not everybody has something as prestigious as that and has billionaires every year who come and see them. A lot of them, like a couple of hundreds. So that's huge. And he was very depressive during his entire life. He suffered from depression. And I've learned last week, nearly 1 week ago, I've learned that he killed himself. This is really important to me. Once, it is very bad news because I've never was able to tell him thank you for what he did to me. And as a Stoic man, I have to show as much gratitude as possible. So that's a bad news for me. But also, it's a great lesson. It tells you that fame and luxuries you can acquire will never make you happy. That happiness is something that you cannot buy. And there's no diploma, there's no rank. You cannot be the director of Tesla, of Toyota, or anything else. And think because you're famous and can call a lot of shots that you will be happy. Happiness has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with money. I'm the opposite of him. I'm still, if I compare myself to him, I'm still poor. I ended up in the streets without any money and without any roof over my head. And I still did not kill myself. He did kill himself, while he has more that most human can ever dream about. For me, it's the confirmation that you cannot be happy if you're not philosophical. You cannot be happy if your conscience doesn't tell you to be happy. Because actually, it's a way of thinking, being happy. Now I enjoy life. While I was in his school, then I thought a lot about suicide. And I was very close, even in his school, put an end to my life. And maybe it would have been even worse than putting an end to my life. And over decades, even afterwards, I was thinking a lot of suicide and I came very close to it a couple of times. But I still thought that there was a way to endure it or a way to hope that things get better. And once I've discovered philosophy, it changed. So then I realized that, for example, Diogenes, who was a beggar in the street, was actually much more happy than anybody else, even than Alexander the Great, who came and visited him. He was actually much more happy. And the only title he had is being a philosopher, a cynic philosopher. It's not Stoicism, but the current as close as possible to Stoicism. They were more extreme, actually, than we are. And he was happy. I think he was more happy than most people on earth. And even though he had nothing and he begged in the streets, he managed to have a long life. And I think he fell into slavery once, but he also managed to get out of it. He's one of the greatest men who has ever worked on earth. And it just shows you that life isn't unfair. It isn't unfair because, yes, it's unfair. I did get nothing from my parents, and he get a lot. To buy his institute, he wasn't poor. Before that, he did real estate, and he had a lot of money to do real estate, the director I'm talking about. He was by far not poor. And my family members, even though they're not poor, they did nothing for me. But that doesn't matter. And even though my life was hard and I suffered a lot, I still managed to put off suicide. and he could not. And now you tell me it's because he was sick. He has a chemical imbalance in his brain. That's the explanation we give nowadays. That's the explanation a psychiatrist will give you, a doctor. We think that psychiatrists are doctors. The issue with that is, one, that imbalance, you can create it. I can take a rat in a lab and create that imbalance by messing up his life, by giving him the impression that he's helpless, that he cannot escape pain. If I do that, the imbalance that director has, that every depressive man has, appears suddenly in his brain. I also can take it away. Once he realizes that he's not incapable to escape pain, once he realizes that he has an impact on his life and that his life is not meaningless, but that he can actually find food, escape electroshocks, and so on, then that imbalance disappears also. So by changing his environment, I create the imbalance and I put it back. Now, of course, that director was in a lab and he didn't get electroshocked every day, but he still had a belief in his brain. Something told him that he isn't happy, or something told him that stuff aren't right. Also, they can treat you like their employees. They can look very down on you because you pay the money, but the money is nothing for you. And you treat him like an employee, like the guy who cleans your home or cooks your meals. You just don't think that they're worth any attention because they're just slaves to you. And a lot of people can act in that way. And maybe that was something he couldn't deal with. I cannot tell you what exactly is, but I'm convinced that it was his Weltanschauung, that it was his beliefs that made him depressive. If you change those beliefs, depression goes away. I'm convinced of that. Now, changing your beliefs is very hard, especially because you don't know which belief makes you suffer, which belief makes you depressive. It's very hard to say. It is not something you do on conscience. It's your subconscious who creates that beliefs. But it's a very hard belief, and whatever I say or whatever any doctor says or whatever book you read, you won't change your opinion. But that belief makes you unhappy. And if you change your beliefs, and you start believing that money, fame, and opinions of others do not matter, suddenly you feel much better and you start getting happy. But as long as somebody else, what he does or what he thinks about you is important to you, well, that will harm you because then you give that person a lot of power and that will end up harming you. There's something else I want to say on that. You said, for example, when you talk about your friends, it matters how your friends look at you. And if your friends think you were tidy and paid for your funeral and all that. Also, all the stuff you want to do, I don't know what you really want to do and what is just society who has told you should do it. When you have a desire, does that desire really come from you? Or is it just society who has told you that that's important? A lot of people want to have a diploma, get a job, and so on. But actually, it's not that they really desire that. It's not that they want to work like an accountant or a dentist. It's just that society has made them believe that that is necessary. It's necessary to get to university, to get a degree, and then to do your job until you retire. But society has put that in their head. But that might not be at all what they want to do or what interests them in life. When you have an opinion, you have to examine from where does it come. Is it my teachers? Is it my parents? Is it the law? From where does it come? Why do I believe that I have to do that? And why do I believe that it's important to me? I'm not saying that it's not important. If to you it's important, then it's important for you. And you can think about it as you wish. I mean, you are entitled in your own opinions. I will always respect them. But examine the thoughts. For example, there was something wrong with his thoughts. By saying wrong, it wasn't as it should be. His thoughts, his desires, and his aspirations in life should be the same as a wise man, the director I'm talking about. And that wasn't the case. And because he took a distance from what the wise man is, and he's happy, the wise man will always be happy, whatever happens. But because he took a distance in his beliefs, in his acting, and in his way of living, he learned bad beliefs that make him sad. He got depressive. And it's a very hard thing to realize, but I'm sure you can heal depression. And with the antidepressant, well, you can try, and maybe it will help you a little, but don't expect any miracles. Normally, antidepressant, I've read some studies about that. They say, how good is the antidepressant and how much does it actually help depressive people? And the answer I got is it's like going for a run once a week. It's like going for jogging once a week. Now, if you're very sad and life is very hard for you and you suffer a lot like that director, then going once a week for a run won't fix you. That's not enough. You can start with that, but it's not enough. The work you have to do on your opinions and your Weltanschauung, the look you have on the world has to change. And you have to realize where your power lies and where it doesn't lie and what you can do so that you don't believe that you're helpless. Because learned helplessness will make you depressive. You look very sad now that I talk to you about that.
You're right. That wasn't intentional. I was just listening. No, I'm not super sad, I think. But you were talking about a little bit sad topics, I guess.
Anything you would like to reply? Or do we still have time to look at a couple of hands?
Well, I would only say that thoughts change and circumstances change. So that's another thing that has helped me, that it just because how things are today doesn't mean they're going to be like that in a year or in a week. Even in a sad day, I can remember that I have felt very happy and joyful another day. And who says those times won't return? I think that's quite unlikely that it will always stay the way it is in that moment. So I guess I would say time heals everything in that way.
I don't mind what you say, Norman. And cases you're right. But the director we talk about didn't agree with you. And he still thought that suicide was the best solution and the only thing that could put an end to his life. Now, he was on that moment. But look, he had a medical team taking care of him. I mean, we're not living in the jungle. They did everything they could for him. And they explained to him just what you said now, that I can guarantee you that even if he suffers a lot now, it will not last forever. And he still didn't believe it, and he still did kill himself. And why didn't he believe it? Because he struggled with the same thing during decades. And then he finally said, enough is enough. I put an end to my life. I know what they are telling me. I know the meds they give me, but I've had enough. So when I listen to you and hear what you say, I get the impression that you think that he did the wrong choice and that he could have endured it or keep on living, even though he's depressive. Because you say it won't be that bad. So according to you, nobody asked to kill himself for depression ever. And in that case, he did the wrong choice.
No, that's not actually what I mean. I'm just saying things that I think or have worked for me. I can't be the judge of anyone else, right? I can only say what the thoughts help me. So people have different circumstances, all that stuff.
I like that you respect his decision, because I do too. But his circumstances, when you talk about circumstances, were one of the most favorable you can imagine. That's so astonishing with what happened. External circumstances were the most favorable imaginable, because not a lot of people have what he had his entire life.
I think they've done studies about how happy people feel about their life, and often the happiest people in some poor African country or something like that. I could be wrong on that. But I'm not so sure that wealth goes together with happiness that much.
It might not come through our discussion, but I have the deepest respect for him, for that director. And I'm very touched that he chose me and did something for me, that he thought that I was worth it. And I'm also touched, I also admire him that he was sincere enough to put an end to his life. Because a lot of people would have just kept on going and get the endless compliments all day long and play the role that he's supposed to play as a director and a wealthy man. But he thought that it's more important to put an end to his suffering. So he was sincere. At least he was sincere. And that's not all. At least it's not the right word. But I respect him more now that he did that than before, when I didn't know that he did it. It's not that I think it's the only solution that was possible, or that is the best solution that was possible. But in his case, I think he tried everything he could. And so he came to the solution that matters. I mean, that was best for him. And I would have liked to be his philosopher and work on his beliefs and see if we cannot change something and give him back some vitality and some love for life. But unfortunately, I didn't know that he was suffering, and I'm a philosopher now, but that wasn't the case 10, 20, 30 years ago. So what I can do now, I couldn't do in the past. And even if I came to him, he probably would have just dismissed me. But the thing is still, he was sincere and I respect that. I like people who do not just talk, but act according to their beliefs and analysis. I've written a passage in my 5th book, and it's very favorable to him, and I try to show all the gratitude that I have for him. I didn't name him because I don't know if his son or anybody else would like me to name him, so that's why I kept that out the book for now. But maybe I go see his son, who is now the director of the school, and have a chat with him and see what I can say and over what we can talk together. And reminding, for me, what a great man his dad was for me. Especially now that I know that he was sincere enough to put an end to his life. Because until then, until you face death, you always can lie. You always can cheat. But once you face death, there's no more cheating, there's no more lying. So I really like that. Because then every man has to be sincere and act according to his beliefs and real feelings. So I really like that. When you stop playing the comedy, when you stop playing and you start acting. I mean, acting according to your beliefs and your thoughts. Because until then, everything can be just a lie. A wife can say that she's happy, a kid can laugh, but a husband can brag about his car or his house, but it's all a lie. But when you face death, then there's no more way to lie to yourself. Then you really have to look things in the eye and think about your life one last time. I admire that. But it's quite surprising. It's a paradox that I, who thought a lot about suicide in that school and afterwards, I've never put an end to my life. And he, while my circumstances were more inclined to renounce my life, and his circumstances were so favorable, and he still decided that was the best thing to do. And I respect him for that. I mean, if I'm his philosopher, and we work on his decision to put an end on his life, he talks about, I would never say it's a bad decision. I would just try to see if we cannot change his feelings, if we cannot give him back some energy and some love for life, if we cannot turn it around. But if I try 6 months, 2 years, or 3 years, and I see that everything I teach and everything I say has no impact and nothing gets better, well, then I must admit, then the only thing I can say is, how much do you suffer? Then he will tell me how much. I tell him on a degree of 0 to 10, how much do you suffer? If he tells me 10 out of 10, I say, I understand that is unbearable. And since I failed and the psychiatrist and medication, everything has failed, and you are already wealthy, so since nothing works, if you suffer 10 out of 10 and nothing I say or nothing that the doctors do helps, then it's the best decision to put an end to your life. There's no point suffering that much and keeping on doing it. I wouldn't want to live like this one single day of my life. One day I could, because I tell myself it's over quite fast, but I wouldn't want to live like this a couple of years. So if the suffering is immense and nothing helps, not my philosophy, not psychotherapy, not antidepressant, if nothing can help, then it's the best decision, according to me. We are talking about very difficult subjects. A lot of people wouldn't want to think about that. Thank you a lot for listening to me and thinking it through. But don't think that I think that everybody should kill himself. I think you can get a lot of happiness out of life, but I don't think it is where most people search for it. I don't think it's in wealth. I don't think it's in fame. I think it's something very internal, and you have to do a lot of work on yourself. Anything you would like to reply, Norman?
Nothing comes to mind at the moment.
Okay, great. Thank you for listening. Don't make it longer than you want, because we are already in 1 hour and 24 minutes.
Okay.
Ace 5 suited.
I would like to hear your pros and cons of going all in and not going all in this situation.
Well, the thing is, if I go all in, I make it easier on myself, and he just limp. If he's not a sneaky player, he should fold. Limping is very bad. He shouldn't have limped in the first place. Now, if he's sneaky and he has a couple of aces or a couple of pocket kings, even pocket nines, then it's a bad idea. So if I see in the flop, I can see how he acts on the flop. Maybe I can, and then decide. On the flop, I think I would be first. So I cannot see what he does. Is that correct, Norman?
Well,
I mean, that I'm first on the flop to act.
There seems to be some doubt regarding that. So
the thing is, it starts with the big blind.
Because player 5 is actually called the dealer button, and you are in the big blind this hand. And the big blind.
Sorry. Since I'm in the big blind, then I still have to act first. No, he has to act first. I'm the last to act. So I will see on the flop what he does. I will see what he does, and then I can make my decision. It would be more prudent to see a flop and see what he does, and then make my decision how to go forward. But ace-5 is good enough to go all in my opinion. So I think I can do an all-in, and it would make my life easier. There are 5 players left, so I'm not on the bubble. An all-in would make my life easier. What do you say, Norman?
There were some slight inaccuracies. You will have to go first on the flop if you do go to the flop. The order is that the dealer button goes last post-flop. Pre-flop, the big blind goes last. So this first street, you go last. But all the flop, turn, and river, player 5 would go last if they were still in the hand. And player to the left of player 5, player 1 in the small blind, would go first if they would still be in the hand, and then it would go clockwise from player 1. So flop, turn, and river, the small blind goes first, which would mean you would go second if everyone was in the hand, but as player 1 has folded, you would be going first, then would be going player 3. So the order was a bit different.
I get it. The order is that it starts from under the gun 2, normally pre-flop, and once we are on the flop, the turn, and the river, then it starts from the big blind is first. The big blind, is he first or last to act? The big blind is first. No, according to what you just said, I would say the big blind is first to act, but it sounds a little strange to me.
At what moment?
On the flop.
And well, small blind would be first if they were still in.
Small blind is first, and big blind is then last to act on the flop.
No, big blind would be second.
But if everybody's in, if all 8 players are in,
then you would be second out of 5 to act.
And the big blind would be last.
No, the big blind would be second. You would be second. So I think the complication here is that you might have confusion with the concept, the dealer button and the big blind. And the big blind is really only relevant pre-flop. When there's no cards on the board, that's where big blind is the last one. And pre-flop order is player 3 first, player 4, player 5, player 1, and then you.
I didn't want to say big blind, I want to say the button. I mess up. That's why it makes no sense what I'm saying. So yeah. I get it. So let me say it again. Pre-flop, it goes from under the gun to the big blind. Big blind is last to act. On the gun 2 is first to act. Pre-flop. And on the flop, the small blind is first to act, and last, the button is last to act. Do I get it right this time?
Yes, that was more accurate.
Okay, great. Thank you, Norman. So I wouldn't see what he does. So in that case, I think all in is even better.
So I would bring some things to your attention here. One is currently we're in 3rd place, which means even though we're 2 players from the bubble, we're in a pretty good situation. Now, if you go all in and he folds, then you would even solidify your place in top 3, which is good. And if you go all in and he calls and you win the all in, then actually you would be the chip leader. And that would also be good for you. But it also means that you have a position at the moment that's valuable, that you're currently 3rd. And if nothing changes, that also keeps you in top 3. So you would be taking on a risk by going all in. And if he calls and you lose that all in, then the tournament would pretty much end for you. So, because you would have around 1.5 big blinds left if you lost that all in. So in that sense, it's a very consequential decision, and it would be easier to answer if we knew something more about how player 3 has played. Now, without knowing that, he did still limp from the 1st position on the table. I would consider that quite strong. Even though he did not raise, I think he would do a lot of folding with 4 opponents. And also considering he only started the hand with 7 big blinds, I think he's not just limping a weak hand at this moment. So I'm not so sure he's planning to fold, and I'm also not so sure he has a hand weaker than ace-5 very often. In my mind, he could be limping 2 picture cards or Broadway cards as they're called, something like a king and a jack. He could be limping an ace, in which case most aces are stronger than ace-5. He could be limping a pocket pair, in which case most pocket pairs are considerably stronger than ace-5. Any pocket pair stronger than pocket 5s. So I think the difference here is that I do think that his limp is something that I see as a threat. As even though it's not a raise, it is not a fold either. And he decided to limp in with a short stack with 4 opponents, with a good chance one of the 4 opponents could raise or essentially put him all in. And yet he still decided to limp in. So I see it as quite of a dangerous situation here, actually. If the small blind had limped in, I would be less worried. Small blind has to put just half a big blind in. They have just one opponent. At that point, I would think ace-5 is doing good. But in this case, the nature of a limp changes as the tournament progresses. So first hands in a tournament, people might be limping almost anything because it's very cheap to do so. At this point, every limp is also a big investment for each player, and also even a bad player is likely thinking about their chances of getting to top places. And so I'm assuming this player is limping quite a strong range here. And I'm not sure the all-in will generate too many folds. And when we get all in, I think we're often in at best a coin flip, at worst really horrible situation.
Ace-5 suited is not strong enough. Can I say that ace-jack suited is strong enough? Or can I also go down to 10 suited to make my all-in? Are you still here, Norman?
Yes, I am. I do think ace-10 would be enough.
Ace-10 would be enough? Ace-9, no.
Well, I mean, it would be better than ace-5. It's doing stronger than ace-5 in an all-in scenario. It's tough to answer without knowing more about how player 3 has been playing.
Okay, but if I would want to be prudent, then I shouldn't go lower than ace-10 suited.
Yes, so going back to what I said about your current position, you are currently 3rd in chips. So that's something to hold on to. That's something to not gamble away unnecessarily.
Okay, so I checked. Now I have a lot of outs since I can make a flush. And my ace also gives me some out, but my 5 doesn't give me an out. So I check again and see what he wants to do.
Yes, I like that approach.
I went for a lot. Did I go 5x? What did I do? What's that sizing, Norman?
Well, it's nearly putting him all in. It's about double the size of the pot.
Okay, so you think that's a bad idea, since I don't know how if he likes or dislikes the flop.
Well, there's some benefits to it. I mean, it make him fold, which is good if he doesn't have too much. The trouble here is on this board, it's many hands like jack, 9, 8. I mean, any 10 is a straight draw. People can have a jack, a 9, and 8. So he might fold pocket 6s maybe, or pocket 7s, or pocket 4s. That would be good for us. He might fold a hand like ace-5 without a flush draw, or ace-6. So there are some benefits to it, but it also leaves it all up to a chance in a big way as well. I do think he will call at least half the time, and then we have around 50% to win this hand. But actually, I don't mind this too much on the flop. I mean, this is a good flop for you, but it's also good if he folds and we don't have to see the turn and a river. So I don't mind this choice, but it is very committal, right? This pot possibly could have gone way slower. Maybe he doesn't want to bet on the flop, or bets just one big blind. So it's very committal, but I can see the benefits of it, as in if he folds, then we don't even have to complete our draw, and it does put a lot of pressure on him if he does not have a jack strong hand on this board. So I would say I'm indifferent about this. I don't mind this.
Okay.
And he did, which is good.
Great. Pocket 9. So I have somebody who raised to 3 big blinds. He shows a lot of strength and the cutoff. And I get one more guy who joins. He's the big blind, and he joined. So now the big blind checks, cutoff checks, and I think he should bet. How much should I bet? My hand needs some protection. So maybe I go for 2/3 of a pot. What do you think about that?
I think that's a good conclusion, that we really wouldn't mind taking the hand down here. We don't want to see a 7, a 6, a spade, an ace, a king, a queen, a jack, a 10. But at this moment, we have an overpair. So likely we have the best hand right now. But it would be good to pressure the other players out of this pot, as turn and river cards might not be as favorable for us. So the 2/3, I like it here.
I have one caller. and one more 7. He checks again. What do I do? I check and win the pot with my pocket nines if the river is not too dangerous. Do I go a half pot and want him to call, or do I go all in? So what is best?
Quite a few options.
I think he doesn't like as it is until now. Either he doesn't like or he wants me to bet because he has a 7. But the chance of him having a 7, I think it's quite low. So I actually don't mind going all in. And no bubble pressure. And the pot is big. My 9 looks good on it. There's no risk of a flush. I am not too much scared of a straight. 6, 7 is just 2 cards. But I would be more scared if there were 3 in a row, 4 in a row, or 3. So I think that my hand is doing not too bad. I don't see how can he beat me with pocket jacks, but he didn't play as if he had pocket jacks. So I think all in is good. Or wanting him to call and taking the risk that the river turns ugly. Because if the river comes a queen, he has a queen, then I'm in a bad situation.
Quite a few options here. One issue I see with the all-in is even though it wins you the pot often, it also can lose you the tournament if you're wrong, which it's still possible someone had aces or jacks and is being very sneaky with it. It's possible he had a 7, even as it is unlikely. And when he would fold, often he would not have too much. So when he folds, you were likely to win the hand anyway. I actually would like a check here and to slow down a bit so the pot won't get all in. So yes, there can be a bad river card, but you will see what he does first. And he might also not like a queen on the river. He might also not like a king on the river. And if he has a 6 or some weaker hand, then you still have very good chances of winning the hand. So the sort of mindset is that if he somehow has a 7, if he somehow has pocket kings or aces, then we're not gonna lose it all. But if he doesn't, then we'll win this pot without even needing to bet. He will get one more chance to improve on the river, but his chances won't be too good that this river will help him. And most likely your 9s will be good regardless of what the river card brings. So that would be the most prudent approach here, I would find. But I can't take too much issue in all in here, but it is risking a lot. And is it really necessary is my question. To win this pot of 25, can't we win it by just checking the turn and checking the river? I think we can.
Okay, thank you, Norman. Go for half pot. He goes all in, I fold. Do you agree with my fold?
It didn't look too good at this point once he went all in. So I think it's a reasonable fold you made. I think it's a strong fold even. But again, if we had not bet the turn, then we would not have to deal with that. And likely, maybe he bets half pot on the river and we called that, and you would have lost the same amount, but at least seen the river and seen what cards he has.
Okay, thank you, Norman. So I fold my pocket 9. I think you agree, because he went 7-25. It's a big race.
We have 6 opponents here, and one opponent is already going very big bets. So I think it's a wise choice to let this one go. I like your decision here.
Thank you, Norman. Kings, I have somebody who makes a mega raise. So he's pretending to have aces or something very good, or kings or queens, but I already have kings. And the thing is, he might have aces, but he also might not have them. So I think I should call. I should call all in, Eve. What do you say?
I think you could call what you said there for a moment as well. But all in, I don't mind it. But calling would leave you some way to escape on the flop. But I think all in, your hand is strong enough for an all in.
Okay, thank you, Norman. So that worked fine. And that was the last hand. Great. Now, any final words?
Prepare yourself for a possibly challenging lesson next week.
Will we do? Since you talk about it, tell me what we will do.
Well, we will work a bit with ranges and the average hand the opponent has and some math, which I'm thinking, could we use one of your hands for that idea there? Maybe I'll have that in mind. But it is a bit difficult to explain without just showing you, would be way easier. So basically we're gonna work with a tool, and that shows if you put a range, how often the opponent has a top pair, how often they have a straight, how often they have a flush draw. The goal of that is to improve your intuition about it. So if there's a flush draw on the board, how often do they actually have a flush draw? Is it 1%? 10%, 50% if there's two kings on the board? How often do they have that king? If you have pocket nines again, well, how likely is it one player has a king? If the straight comes out, how often could the player have a straight? So just improve some mathematical understanding of how often people connect with the board, and there will be probably some surprising things there, like surprising how often someone has an ace if the ace comes on the board. And also, I mean, I think I pretty much explained it as detailed as I can at this point.
It makes me think about a game we played. Didn't I have to guess how high the probability is in some scenarios? But that's not exactly what you want to do. Makes me think about that. That was actually a fun game. I enjoyed playing that. Found it interesting. I had 2 cards and you asked me what the probabilities are. That was an interesting game. I liked that.
Yes, we will do that again sometime as well.
But now it's something different. Also, you talked about average hand. That's a very good exercise. For example, I didn't see that my ace-5 wasn't that good, ace-5 suited with my opponent limping. I didn't see that because I didn't think about the average hand he should have. Realized that his average hand, there's a good chance he has better. But he could still, with me having ace-5 suited, he could have not an ace. But then he would still have something good like queen, jack offsuit, or I don't know. Would he do it with 9-8 suited? I don't know. But I understand that a lot of cards actually could be better than my ace-5. And if I would have realized his average hand, then I would see that it's not so good. So playing average hand, asking the question, what's his average hand, is very hard to answer, but it's a good question. You always come up with great things and always interesting. And that's very nice because I think that we can work together for a long time without it getting boring. And if I learn more, then maybe it gets even more interesting if I know more about poker. Look, Norman, you can see the difference between those 2 cameras. So that's the new camera and that's the old one. I think the difference is huge. Don't you think so? I'm not in the center of the screen, but that's not the only issue. I look very grayed out. And if I go to the new camera, now I like it more. What do you think?
It is more bright. It is more cheerful.
And it puts me in the center always. See, now it puts me again in the center. That's quite nice. Every time I get out, he will put me again in the center. That's also a nice trick. So I will put something on my old camera. So next time I can see it. I saw that there was something wrong. I thought, why do I look so creepy today? And normally I look better. So I will put something on it so I don't mess it up. You don't have to change anything. Maybe once I can make you a donation, you can get a new camera, maybe the same one or another one, a 4K camera. Norman, thanks a lot. It was very interesting talking to you. And thank you for taking interest in my book and also giving your opinion about life and suicide and all the hard subjects we talked about today. And I hope you get better with your habits. I hope you'll find out which ones are very important to them, and then I hope you can stick to them. Everybody can improve. I can, and you can too. So don't give up, and it will get better. Don't worry.
Thank you for sharing your kind words and your thoughts today, but also in your book, which I'll keep on reading. So thank you.
Thank you for bringing up my book. I really enjoyed talking about it. Enjoy your week and see you next week. Take care, Norman. Bye-bye.
You too.